Hello, and welcome to the NIH Summer Research Education Experience Program, an R25. While you will be muted during the webinar, you may type your questions into the Q&A box, and you can see a screenshot in the lower right-hand corner. The Q&A will be held at the end of the webinar. For the outline of this webinar, we'll start with the goal of the program, discuss the participating institutes and centers, talk about the Summer Research R25 components, and we'll conclude with a question and answer session. The goal of this program is to have an award that provides high quality, authentic research experiences for high school and or college students or science teachers during the summer academic break. Applications that demonstrate the potential to impact students and teachers from diverse backgrounds are particularly encouraged. All programs are expected to promote inclusive research environments. The proposal must fall within the mission of one participating institute. And we encourage you to reach out to one of the program officers before you submit this proposal. Today, we'll hear from the following institutes and their program officers. For the NIAAA, we'll have Dr. Laura Quacco. From NIBIB, Dr. Joan Grieve. From NIDA, Dr. Albert Avila. From NIDCR, Dr. Lynn King. From NIEHS, Dr. Michael Humble. And from NINDS, Dr. Lauren Ulrich. And I'll pass it to you, Dr. Quacco.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So my name is Laura Quacco. I am the program officer for NIAAA who will be the point of contact for this mechanism. And I'm happy to tell you a bit about the mission of NIAAA and our applicable research portfolio. So our mission is to generate and then disseminate fundamental knowledge about the effects of alcohol on health and well-being, and then apply that knowledge to improve diagnosis, prevention, and treatment of alcohol-related problems, including alcohol use disorder, across the lifespan. Our research portfolio is broad and includes genetics, neuroscience, epidemiology, prevention, and treatment across the range of the continuum of care for individuals with alcohol use disorders. Across these topics, we're particularly interested in research to address alcohol-related health disparities.
Hi there, I'm Joan Grieve. I'm from the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, and I am the program official who has the honor of acting as the point of contact for this amazing FOA. At NIBIB, we will support applications focusing on summer research experiences broadly in the areas of biomedical imaging, bioengineering, or health informatics. NIBIB will only support programs for high school science teachers and community college faculty from STEM-related departments and not for students.
Hello, everyone. My name is Albert Avila, and I am the director of NIDA's Office of Diversity and Health Disparities, as well as the deputy director for the research training component at NIDA. And we are very excited to be participating in this funding opportunity announcement. For this announcement, NIDA will support applications focusing on identifying the biological, environmental, behavioral, and social causes and consequences of drug use and addiction across the lifespan, including research in basic science. Applications should seek to develop new and improved strategies to prevent drug use and its consequences, new and improved treatments to help people with substance use disorders to achieve and maintain a meaningful and sustained recovery, as well as increase in the public health impact of NIDA research programs. I do want to say that these research areas are in context of training the future generation of substance use and addiction researchers. So while you're focusing on the professional development for high school students, high school teachers, or undergrads within these areas, we're really focused on helping transition these high school students to STEM areas in undergrad, and also the undergrads to graduate school. We have a high interest in the high school outreach. So both the directed research opportunities for the students, as well as for the high school teachers, so that they can broadly disseminate at their schools and we can reach more people. Feel free to reach out to me at any time, and look forward to your applications.
Hi, I'm Lynn King, Chief of the Research Training and Career Development Branch at the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research, or NIDCR. The mission of NIDCR is to improve dental, oral, and craniofacial health through research, research training, and the dissemination of health information. NIDCR supports basic, clinical, translational, behavioral, and social science research. For the Summer Research Experience Program, NIDCR is interested in supporting research experiences aimed at improving dental, oral, and craniofacial health. We encourage research experiences that incorporate data science or address oral health disparities, and we strongly encourage participation by individuals from groups underrepresented in biomedical research. For more information, see nidcr.nih.gov. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Humble. I'm a program official from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Our mission is to discover how the environment affects people in order to promote healthier lives. The NIEHS will support applications that really focus on summer research experiences in the environmental health sciences. The environmental health field is very broad, but generally considers research looking at how things like air pollution, it might be pesticides or industrial pollutants in the water, it could be metals like arsenic, lead, mercury, things like that, how those types of things impact your health. So that's what fits under the mission of the NIEHS. We will support programs that are oriented towards high school students, undergraduates, or teachers, again, all looking at doing research on how the environment affects human health.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Lauren Ulrich, a program director at NINDS. And the mission of NINDS is to address or seek fundamental knowledge about the brain and nervous system and or use that knowledge to reduce the burden of neurological disease. And we also really encourage activities focusing on understanding and addressing disparities in neurological health, healthcare, and health outcomes in disparate populations. We support basic, translational, and clinical research. So we really run the gamut, and you can learn more about our mission at the website listed below. We will support high school students, undergraduates, or high school science teachers, and we will support one program per institution focused on students and one focused on teachers, except with a strong justification. So if there already is a funded program at your institution, please reach out to me before you apply.
So I will be talking through some of the components of this Summer Research R25 mechanism. So one thing that we really want to emphasize with this mechanism is that it's not one size fits all. The research application should address a key audience and address an important aspect or need in research education. The application should have clear program goals and milestones and a feasible plan that will achieve those goals. We're interested in applications taking a holistic approach, taking advantage of institutional strengths and community attributes. And lastly, innovation is a bonus. Effectiveness is most important. With respect to the principal investigator, the PI should be an established investigator and capable of providing both administrative and scientific leadership to the proposed program. Multiple PI applications should have complementary and integrated expertise and must have a leadership plan included. The effort from the PI must be appropriate for the work described, and funding from the IC is not required. For program faculty, mentors should have research expertise and experience that is relevant to the proposed program. Mentors must be committed to continuing their involvement throughout the total period of the mentee's participation in this award. Mentors should demonstrate a history of or the potential for their intended roles as mentors. Mentors should be good role models by nature of their scientific accomplishments. And we're particularly interested in researchers from diverse backgrounds, including racial and ethnic minorities, persons with disabilities, and women, and encourage them to participate as program faculty. Bio sketches for participating mentors are allowable, but are not required as part of the application. With respect to an advisory committee, this is not a required component of the application, but we do recommend including them. The composition, roles, responsibilities, and desired expertise of committee members, frequency of committee meetings, and other relevant information should be included. Finally, please describe how the advisory committee will evaluate the overall effectiveness of the program. And turning to our participants. Within this mechanism, participants could include high school students, college students, high school science teachers, or STEM community college faculty. The application must describe the intended participants and the eligibility criteria and/or specific educational background of participants, and how they will be selected for participation in the program. An intention to go to graduate school is not required for this mechanism. Programs for science teachers must have a clear plan for how teachers will utilize their summer experience in their teaching during the school year. And lastly, unless strongly justified, R25s should be used primarily for the education of US citizens and permanent residents.
Okay, so for the design of the program, you must have a minimum of 8 weeks of full-time summer research experiences and a maximum of 15 weeks throughout the calendar year. As long as you have that minimum of 8 weeks during the summer, you may also request part-time support for the participants to work on their research projects during the school year to reach the maximum of the 15 weeks of full-time. So for example, if you had 10 weeks in the summer, you could have up to 10 weeks of half-time during the academic year for a total of the 15 weeks. You are not required to use the full maximum of 15 or to do work during the school year, but that is allowable. The program, like we said earlier, should contain authentic, meaningful summer research experiences. It should also include complementary activities that support the participants' scientific development, such as scientific writing and presentation skills, and it also must include training in rigor and reproducibility, such as learning how to maintain a lab notebook or other aspects of statistics or experimental design. The majority of the students' research experiences must fall within the mission of the institute that you are submitting to. And like we also said earlier, you must clearly define your goals and your outcomes, and then also how you're going to know if you've achieved those goals and outcomes. If you have other programs at your institution, you are encouraged to take advantage of economies of scale as long as the programs are distinct. And if you have any questions about what constitutes distinctness, you may reach out to the institute that you're applying to. You may also use institutional funds to supplement the program benefits or to provide additional slots in your program. We also encourage including preliminary data on any pilot programs or related efforts at the institution to make the case for need for the program or effectiveness of your proposed program. For the budget, you may propose up to $125,000 of direct costs per year for 5 years. Up to $50,000 may be spent on personnel costs for administering the program, but salary and support for the program faculty mentors is not allowed. You may propose compensation for the person that is directly training the participant, so such as a grad student, a postdoc, or a lab assistant. In terms of salary for high school and undergraduate students, NIH will provide salary and fringe benefits consistent with institutional salary policies. For science teachers, they may be paid up to $21,000 per teacher for a full-time experience for 15 weeks, and programs shorter than 15 weeks will be prorated. It is important that this must be salary and not a stipend, because this is an R25 mechanism. With the R, only salary may be paid. Other allowable costs include housing for the participants, registration fees or tuition, if justified, and up to $1,200 per participant may be requested for program-related expenses and travel to relevant scientific meetings, such as students presenting their summer research project at a scientific meeting. Consultant costs, equipment, supplies, travel for key persons, and other program-related expenses may be included in the program budget if justified. Items that may not be supported with the R25 funds include, like I said earlier, salary and support for the program faculty mentors, salary and support for central institutional administrative personnel, such as budget officers, grant assistants, and building maintenance personnel, salary and support for administrative activities, such as institutional public relations. Funds may also not be expended to cover the cost of travel between the place of residence and the training institution, except in cases of disability or extreme hardship. And because the R25 program is not intended as a substitute for an NRSA, costs to support full-time participants, so 40 hours a week for 12-month period, are not allowable. A letter of institutional commitment is required. Appropriate institutional commitment should include provision of adequate staff, facilities, and educational resources. And as I said earlier, your proposed program may complement but must be distinct from other federally funded programs at the institution. You want to make sure that your program design takes advantage of the educational environment, and you want to make sure that you demonstrate collaboration and buy-in from all the programs, departments, and institutions involved, and usually that will be through a letter of support. With this reissue of the FOA, we also require an enhancing educational inclusivity statement, and programs are expected to implement robust plans to enhance diversity and to promote inclusive, safe, and supportive research environments. So you should show how you are doing this in your statement, including efforts to sustain the scientific interest of participants from all backgrounds within the program, so retention of all your participants, all your efforts to enhance diversity and promote inclusion, and efforts to cultivate an environment free from harassment and intimidation.
So all applications should include a recruitment plan to enhance diversity. You should include those outreach strategies and activities designed to recruit prospective participants from diverse backgrounds. In doing so, you should describe the specific efforts to be undertaken by the program and how the proposed plan reflects past experiences in recruiting individuals from underrepresented groups. If you are a renewal application, you must include a detailed account of how your experiences in recruiting individuals from underrepresented groups went during the previous funding period, including describing successful and unsuccessful recruitment strategies. All programs must include an evaluation plan for really evaluating the activities that are proposed and supported during this award. The application must specify baseline metrics, for example, the number of participants, their educational levels, demographic characteristics of the participants, as well as measures to gauge the really short and long-term success of the Research Education Award in achieving the objectives that you stated in the application. Wherever appropriate and possible, applicants are encouraged to really obtain feedback from the participants as the program is going along to help identify weaknesses and to provide suggestions for improving the program as it's going. All applications should include a dissemination plan. This is a specific plan that provides details on how to disseminate nationally any findings from the program or materials developed during the course of the research educational program. This could be like sharing course curriculum and related materials via web postings, presentations at scientific meetings, workshops, publications, things of that sort. If you are a renewal application, the review committee will consider the progress that was made during the previous funding period in the overall review of your application, including enhancing education inclusivity plan, as well as the diversity recruitment plan. Some things that the reviewers will be looking at is, did your program successfully implement the proposed programmatic elements as you initially planned? Is the program achieving its stated objectives? Is there evidence that the educational environment is inclusive, safe, and supportive? Is there evidence that the evaluation outcomes and feedback from participants have been acted upon? Are there changes proposed that are likely to improve or strengthen the research education experience program during the next project period? Is the program having a broader impact? For example, are students beyond the participants directly supported by the program, are they being positively impacted by the program's presence at the university? Are training practices and outcomes being shared with the broader biomedical training community? It's really those implementation types of ideas. A letter of intent is requested 30 days prior to the application due date. The application due dates are in the middle of March, so the letter of intent should come in approximately 30 days prior to the due date. A letter of intent is not required. It is not binding. If you send in a letter of intent, it doesn't mean you have to put your application in. But the information is very useful to us at the NIH, as it contains and it really helps the Institute staff to estimate the potential review workload, plan for the review, and it gives us as program officials an idea of who might be coming in, and we have a little bit of information about your program. So the letter of intent should include a descriptive title for your program and the activity that you're proposing. Should include the names and addresses and telephone numbers of the program directors or principal investigators for the R25, the names of any other key personnel that will be involved in the program. It should list the participating institutions and universities within this R25 program, and it should also include the number and title of the funding opportunity. The letter of intent can be sent to Lauren Ulrich at the NIH email address shown here on this slide, or you can contact, if you know that your application is going to be going to a specific NIH institute, you can contact that program official as well. And finally, a few tips for your application. Number one, pay attention to the allowable appendix materials, what can be included and what shouldn't be included. For that matter, pay very close attention to the guidelines provided in the funding opportunity as a whole. Submit these early. There's only one receipt date per year. Again, that's in March, so keep that in mind. So funding will start likely in December or January timeframe. The applications are due in March, but would be reviewed sometime in July. They go to the Institute Advisory Council meetings in October and ultimately are selected for funding, and the earliest award dates would then follow up in the December-January timeframe. And then finally, as has been mentioned earlier, we highly recommend that you contact a program official or somebody associated with this program. And at the end of the funding announcement is a list of contacts. Bounce your ideas off of us, give us an idea of what you're thinking about doing so that we can give you some feedback. We can let you know before you put the application together whether your ideas actually fit the mission of our institutes and the types of programs that we will support. So contact us early on at any point during the year and let us know what you're thinking about doing, and we can provide some feedback. So if you have questions, shown below are the contacts for this program from the various NIH institutes. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time to bounce your ideas off of us. If you have any questions, we will be happy to answer them. With that, we will now move to our question and answer period.
Thank you. Dr. Quacco, can you please tell us if a junior faculty or an assistant professor can be a PI on one of these grants?
Yes, I will be glad to. So the short answer is yes, they can. However, if you are pre-tenure, know that reviewers may be concerned about your bandwidth and ability to kind of manage everything that goes into an R25 on your own. So if you are pre-tenure, your junior faculty, assistant professor, consider the multiple PI model for your application.
All right, thank you. This next question is for Dr. Humble. Is it okay if a PI is not funded by an institute they are submitting to? And what happens if the faculty members aren't funded by an NIH institute?
Yes, thank you for that question. This is certainly okay. The PI or the faculty members that will be participating don't need to be funded from the institute that would ultimately be funding the R25 program. Keep in mind the R25 doesn't really provide funding to do the research. The assumption is that the faculty members will have funding to support the participant research. Where that comes from is less important than the scientific focus of the research, which should fall into the mission interests of the institute that you're applying to. So that's the important thing, that the science is a good match. I think that's probably the most important thing.
Right, Dr. Ulrich, the next question is going to be for you. How should someone planning to apply for this mechanism frame their specific aims?
This is such an important question. I think that a lot of people feel like, oh, it's an R25, it's an educational award. I've seen people think that they don't even need specific aims, but I really encourage you to approach this grant the same way you would approach an R01. So you want to think about having a very clear vision for what the program is and what you're trying to accomplish. So, and thinking about like real goals. So not just a description of the program implementation. So not just something like we will establish a program for education, but what are the actual outcomes you're trying? So is it that you are trying to have students have a certain understanding of a specific topic? Are you trying to get them into graduate school or medical school? And then once you've established those goals, thinking about how you will measure them and figure out whether you're accomplishing those goals or not. So that would be your evaluation plan. And then also thinking about like even preliminary data, same as you would include in an R01.
Wonderful. Dr. Avila, can you tell us what level of salary support is available for program faculty and mentors?
Sure, thanks, Marguerite. So $50,000 combined salary is available for administrators, clerical, or other staff with direct responsibilities for administering the program. That's allowed. However, program faculty members may not be supported on this award, as we all came together and decided that mentoring students is considered part of that individual's academic duties. So that's for the program mentors, but administrative costs up to $50K is allowed. Graduate students, however, or residents mentoring participants may be compensated.
All right, I'll ask one more sort of pre-asked question, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. Dr. Humble, can you tell us how many institutions can collaborate in the same geographic region?
Yes, that's a good question. Technically, there's no limit to the number of institutions that can collaborate. One institution obviously is the lead on the application, but in terms of how the other institutions would collaborate, it's really up to the PI and how many there are. Again, there's really no limit. Sometimes collaborations are set up specifically for recruiting students from those universities. Other recruitments are more global in nature. But I think I guess the other aspect is the collaborations really don't have to be in the same geographical region either. They can collaborate with institutions across the country, depending on how that collaboration is set up. So the feasibility of the collaboration is important, really outlining what's going to happen with this collaboration and really making sure that the collaborating institutions are fully on board. In that regard, it's probably good to have letters of support from the collaborating institutions so that they acknowledge that they are taking part in this R25 program. If it's a very important collaboration, you might consider identifying someone at that collaborating institution maybe as a multiple PI type of situation. So various things to consider, but there's really no limit to the number of collaborations you can have in your R25.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what makes these programs so strong, is having a wide network. Next, we'll ask a question from the chat, and I'm going to lob this to you, Dr. Ulrich, from Kevin Tidwell. After the recent disturbances in summer programs due to the pandemic, would it be beneficial to have a short plan or description for how the program would handle possible future disruptions to research activities? And I'm assuming much of this is around COVID, but perhaps there might be some other national emergency that may cause some changes in how we might normally operate in person.
I hope not, Marguerite. Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. So there is, there's nothing officially in the FOA, but I do think it's probably just good for your planning purposes to have, just something, maybe not trying to anticipate future catastrophes, but even just a description of where your campus is at right now, what you anticipate. You know, do you anticipate to be fully open next summer? And if not, what, you know, maybe just having some alternative plan or an alternative approaches just in case things aren't open up. From the NIH perspective, we, at least at NINDS, we have been allowing people to be very flexible with how they're implementing their program the past couple of years. So it, you know, wouldn't be held against you if for some reason, because of the ongoing pandemic, that you couldn't actually start your program when you wanted to. But now that we can do a little bit more forward planning and we're a little bit more fluent with virtual learning, it's probably a good idea to have some kind of plan. So I don't know if the other ICs want to jump in here.
I agree with you, Lauren. I think just demonstrating that you have, if not some flexibility already built in, an awareness that you might need to be flexible at some point, and that, you know, your program and what you're proposing doesn't only have one way that it can be done, which is, you know, solely in-person research in the lab for a given set period of hours a day or something like that. So having some flexibility certainly would be useful, even if it's not specifically required.
And this is Mike Hummel. I would agree with Lauren and Laura that demonstrating the flexibility, should it be needed, is probably a nice idea.
All right, Dr. Humble, since you've already started speaking, I'm going to ask this next question of you. We got this before the webinar, but also in the chat. Is there an expected number of trainees per year, or a minimum, a maximum? And would it change if it was high schoolers versus undergraduates? Is there a particular number that PIs should be thinking about when writing this application?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's really no minimum number of students and participants that you would have in these programs. Most programs run probably 8 to 10 students per year, participants per year, but it really depends on the budget that you have for the participants, and really where your target is. High school students are going to have lower salaries than undergraduates. Teachers are going to have higher salaries. So you would sort of expect probably fewer teachers, more high school students. I think the most important thing is that the number of students are reflected, or the participants are reflected well by the budget. But again, there's no minimum. And like I said, most probably have between 8 and 10 per year.
All righty. Dr. Ulrich, should PIs, what should PIs, consider when choosing faculty members to be a part of this?
Let's see. So in terms of the faculty mentors, you know, you really want to think about and explain in your application what kind of experience the faculty have with the specific educational level that you're targeting. So have they ever had high school students or college students or teachers in their lab before? So that should be included in the application. And if they don't have experience with this specific career level, because we know high school students are very different than a postdoc, for example, how are you going to ensure that they are prepared to be mentors for these participants? Are you going to do any kind of mentor training, for example? And this also goes for any other people who will be interacting with the students. So if you have any near peer mentors, like graduate students, postdocs, or residents that might be interacting with the participants, are they going to have any training, or how will they be supported to work with this career level?
Thank you. Dr. Quacco, can you tell us about how big PIs for this should be expecting the scope of the program to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question, and relates somewhat to the number of students. So really there can be variety in the breadth of the program. The more important points are that whatever is being proposed should fit within the mission of the given institute. So for example, for NINDS, it can be general neurological disorders, or it could be focused on dementia. But really it's most important to make sure that the program you're proposing is tailored to the given institute you're proposing it for. But also really important is that you should have a feasible recruiting plan to make sure that you're recruiting enough students to participate in your program. So the specific number of students and the breadth of the program is less important than proposing a program that can actually be done and is feasible within the scope of the application.
And along those lines, Dr. Avila, I'm going to ask you about this. What kind of data should PIs be collecting about their program? And I think this sort of relates to scope, but also perhaps maybe things outside of that, and maybe thinking a little bit bigger picture of what the outcomes are and expectations.
Definitely, yeah, that's an important question, and we're always looking at what are the outcomes and the impact of the program. So some potential data metrics and measures, the obvious ones, obviously, like information about the participants, the mentors, and what success the program has had. So if you high school, how many have gone on to the STEM fields afterwards in undergrad, or for undergrad graduate students, for teachers, looking at the impact of their students and what they've gone on to do. So that would be participants. Other data metrics are surveys, and this was touched upon I think earlier, surveys from the participants in terms of their benefit of the program, what they got out of it, what could be improved, and then one thing for the PIs to keep in mind are these are things that you're going to need both for your progress report on a yearly basis, but also for your resubmission. So should you decide to resubmit in 4 years' time, these are things that definitely will bolster your application for that resubmission.
And along those lines of thinking about outcomes and impact, Dr. Ulrich, can you talk to us about, is it okay if students want to go to medical school? Or what if they're not thinking about going sort of a traditional tenure track faculty position as early as undergraduate?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. And, I would just direct you back to the overall goal of this R25 program is to enhance the training of a workforce to meet the nation's biomedical, behavioral, and clinical research needs. And so clearly clinicians with research experience or who are interested in doing research are a key part of our biomedical workforce. And even thinking about other aspects of the biomedical workforce, we are most interested in promoting the research needs, but that could come in a variety of different flavors. So the most important piece really is to clearly define your participants and design your program around meeting those goals. So if you are thinking about, the population that you have access to is interested in going to medical school, then design your program with their needs in mind, right? So thinking about med school application prep or some kind of clinical shadowing, and then how do you become a clinician researcher, and what are the opportunities to look out for, and sort of priming them for staying in the research field. So that's totally fine, but just recognize that the different career aspirations probably will need different programs.
Yes, that's a very, very good point, an important point. Dr. King, can you talk a little bit about whether participants can work in teams on a research project, or do they need to be doing sort of more independently focused research projects?
So it can be beneficial for individuals at the high school level to work on teams, and this because it helps generate confidence in that group. And I think just one might consider the development of your program, maybe small teams, pairs are often a way to approach this. But if you're going to have larger teams, you might think about how those teams would be organized and how you can ensure that all individuals have equal participation, representation, and contribution to the research that's being done. So, but it's definitely an important consideration when you're developing your programs of how you want to structure the training that's being offered.
All right. Now thinking perhaps a little bit forward thinking, kind of going back to expectations and outcomes. Dr. Avila, can you talk about how extensive does the evaluation plan need to be? Is there an expectation during review of what the PIs might expect to do? Or just even talking a little bit about more of what the goals that need to be outlined in the application.
So, in terms of how extensive, it really, I mean, it just really depends on what the program proposal, entails. So, again, kind of hitting some of the important things. So, what is your recruitment? What was your recruitment plan? The outreach dissemination plan? How many applications did you receive? How many did you accept? The general numbers, the education levels of the participants, demographics. In this FOA, minority recruitment and retention is an important piece. So, talking about that is really important. Discussing what you're doing specifically to build the nation's biomedical workforce in this space is important, as well as measures to gauge short and long-term success. So the long-term success, would be those what we talked about earlier, transitioning to the next career stage, and staying in science, retention. And then the short terms are, what are they getting out of the program? Going back to the participant feedback, even the mentor feedback, that could be important. Ways that, challenges that you face, that PIs have faced, and how they have overcome those are really important, actually, in the resubmission. And sometimes, reviewers appreciate that. Margaret, those are the general ones. And in terms of extensiveness, and I'm open to other panelists also adding to this, but it really does depend on your outreach and your program proposal to determine the extensiveness. But those are some of the baseline metrics, short and long term.
Are there any other panelists that want to jump in and speak to that? All right, so we'll move on to the next question. Dr. Humble, can you talk about programs that are thinking about spanning across disciplines? I'm sure there are many research institutes in the country, and perhaps even represented here, that are multidisciplinary in nature. And so they're likely to have programs, and R25 programs that reflect that. But is it necessary for these programs to propose just one kind of research?
Thank you for that question. There's certainly, science these days is multidisciplinary in nature. For the purpose of this R25, I think the important thing is that the majority of the research being proposed that the participants take part in fits under the mission of one of the participating institutes, because the funding is going to come from one institute. We haven't been really doing any kind of co-funding. So while, for example, if an application came to NIEHS and had some research projects that also fell under some of the other missions, well, those types of things happen, but the majority of the science being proposed by the participant, or that participants would do, would need to fall under the mission of the NIEHS for it to be funded by the NIEHS. So I think while the multidisciplinary aspects are certainly acknowledged, I think the majority of what's proposed needs to fall under one of the institutes. It can't just be general science either. It needs to be specific to that mission.
Thank you. Dr. King, is preliminary data required for an R25 application?
Preliminary data is not required for an R25 application, but what if you provide preliminary data can demonstrate the feasibility of a project. So the whole question is, how are you going to demonstrate the feasibility of the project? And then one of the options is to provide preliminary data, or if the investigators have publications on these types of research training programs, they can demonstrate that they have successfully carried out such a program, or if they have pilot data from previous experiences that they can share. So the question is, how do you demonstrate feasibility? How to or convince the review committee that the program will be can be implemented and be successful. So although preliminary data are not required, that tends to be one of the factors that can be considered as supporting that feasibility. The experience of the principal investigators or the team, the multiple principal investigators, did they have experience in carrying out these types of research training programs at the particular career levels that it's targeted, in high school or undergraduate or with the science teachers. So it's, or pilot data that would demonstrate that they have some experience in those areas.
Thank you. Dr. Kwako, can you talk about the training in responsible conduct of research requirements that are, or the training and responsible conduct of research that is required for these awards?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great question, and it's a very important part of the application. So there are 5 required components in the description of responsible conduct of research and in the training that you'll provide in responsible conduct of research. These components are format, subject matter, faculty participation, duration of instruction, and frequency of instruction. So the application needs to include detailed descriptions of each of these 5 components that are required as part of the responsible conduct of research. Overall, that plan should be appropriate and reasonable for the nature and duration of the proposed program. So it doesn't need to be, incredibly extensive, but it should be sufficient. And certainly that's something that has come up in review, that there's insufficient training in responsible conduct of research. So applicants should, be sure to include not only those 5 required components, again, format, subject matter, faculty participation, duration of instruction, and frequency of instruction, but also make sure that they are thorough and that they're sufficient for what you're proposing to do in the application.
Dr. Ulrich, can you tell us a little bit more about what is meant by authentic, meaningful summer research experiences?
Yes. So, when we're thinking about these summer research experiences, we want it to be more than just sort of an exposure to research or an exposure to science. So, getting a real idea of what it is like to do research. So this might include forming a hypothesis, designing experiments, collecting and analyzing data, presenting the results, all those sorts of things. And, it's a lot to get through in 8 weeks, but I think if you sort of design your program well, there are like little bite-sized pieces that students can kind of pull off, and maybe they're working inside a very established system. Within your lab, you could even be doing some kind of computational work, and or you could be working with databases of existing data and things like that. You do have to be a little bit more creative to get all that done within the summer, but our funded programs show that that is possible.
And Dr. King, can education faculty or non-scientists or perhaps non-research faculty be considered a multi-PI on the R25?
When choosing your multi-PI team or the PI and team of investigators who will lead the project, you really think about what areas of training you're going to provide and what is the role of those people. So you can have individuals without, traditional PhD, or maybe individuals who have experience in education or have advanced degrees in education as opposed to biomedical research. It really depends on their role in the project and why you would choose them and how they will help develop and manage the program. So it's allowable. I think it's because these are research focused. It's really intending to have provide an authentic research experience for the students that it would be very important to have an experienced investigator on that, on the multi-PI team. And I think, as mentioned previously, that what the PI team or PI team should have experience mentoring individuals at that career level, at the high school, at the undergraduate, and have experience, and or someone on the team maybe having experience mentoring or providing these research experiences for high school or science teachers. So it's demonstrating that you have the expertise on the team that to administer the program for all the components that the application is proposing to cover. So it's definitely, but I think you definitely need a leadership, some leadership on the MPI team that is research focused, research experienced and research focused. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I think it answers it very nicely, and it leads us into one of our last questions. And if you have more questions to ask our panelists, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box. But Dr. Humble, I'm going to come to you as one of these last questions that we have, sort of piggybacking off of Dr. King. Is there a special number of faculty that should be included as members in the application, or does the number itself even matter?
Well, thank you for that question. I actually get this question all the time when I'm talking with prospective applicants. How many faculty members should we have, or is there a minimum number? And the answer is there's really no set number of faculty mentors that a program needs to have. There's no minimum number, nor I guess a maximum. It really depends on how many participants you plan on having during the summer. If you have, let's say you have 10 undergraduates that you're designing your program for, if it turns out there's only 2 or 3 faculty members, the reviewers are probably going to look at that and say, well, that's not really providing much choice for the participants, to choose projects for the summer. And likewise, that's putting an awful lot of students into, the lab or onto a project that's being run by that faculty member. And do they really have the bandwidth to oversee that many people? So it really becomes a match between how many students you're going to have in your program and then having enough faculty to give the students, a good choice to match their interests and again, to not overburden any particular faculty member with too many students. So there's no set number. It really depends on how many students your program is designed for.
All right, thank you. So we did, my petition worked. We have one more question in the Q&A, and Dr. Avila, if you don't mind taking this one, we have a question about the structure of the program itself. So can week 1 focus on didactics and pairing participants with a mentor, and then the remainder time, the next 7 weeks or so, focus on research with supplemental didactic and other types of sessions?
Thanks, Dr. Matthews, for that. And actually, I'm really glad we got that question. I'm sure the team's happy we got this question, because we really have a focus on the professional development part and the didactic, and that's huge for all of us. We're all into training and research training, and so that's critical. And the short answer is yes. I mean, how you want to structure it, I think all of us here are really flexible and open to how you want to structure your program. This is your unique program. We provide the funding, and you guys fill them. But I will say there are a couple caveats, right? And so you want to make it feasible, the feasibility of the program. And so is it something that will be able to be continued throughout the whole program? Is there continuity? Is it something that the students will stay engaged? If it's a hybrid, if it's in person and part virtual, how are you going to maintain that? The didactic training, it could be up front. It could be scattered throughout, a couple hours over a couple days per week. So again, but I want to go back to sort of the point of professional development. Please, I think that's so important. More and more we're hearing how high school and undergrads want exposure to careers. They want to know what they're going to do with these degrees. What are the opportunities out there? So that's an important piece. Also, the students will stay engaged. If it's a hybrid, if it's in person and part virtual, how are you going to maintain that? The didactic training, it could be up front. It could be scattered throughout, a couple hours over a couple days per week. So again, but I want to go back to sort of the point of professional development. Please, I think that's so important. More and more we're hearing how high school and undergrads want exposure to careers. They want to know what they're going to do with these degrees. What are the opportunities out there? So that's an important The standardized tests, if you can build some of that into test tips, helping with resumes, helping with essays for college entrance or graduate school. All these things factor into and will only strengthen your program. But thank you for bringing that up. Again, it's how you want to structure it, but having it in there consistently and the continuity throughout the eight weeks or however long your program is will be valuable, critical, and will bode well for you.
That is a wonderful response. Thank you so much, Dr. Avila. And another question in the chat, and Dr. Ulrich, I'm going to ask you to answer this one. Is it possible to bring participants back for future years? So say you're recruiting a high school teacher and their students and have the teacher return for continuity of the year with new students.
Yeah, so this is a good question. So we get this question also, not just on the teacher side, but in terms of students coming back, let's say doing 2 summers worth of research experiences and having that built into the program. And that there's nothing in the FOA that prohibits that. I think what I have seen in review is looking at the sort of the trade-off of touching more students or involving more students in research versus having half as many students but doing a deeper dive and really solidifying that. So I think you in your program need to make the case for what are they going to get out of that second year, and why you want them to come back for that second year, besides just getting additional research experience. But we have seen programs successfully make that case. So I would definitely say reach out to your program officer and have a discussion with them about also their priorities for this program. And then in terms of pairing the student and the teacher, so I think again, you want to think about in terms of the design of your program, what are the goals? If it's focused more on the students and the student gains, and the teacher is sort of more just involved, then that is probably a different program than if you're really working with the teacher to implement the research experience into their teaching in the previous or the subsequent years, which is the focus of the teacher-focused programs. Really need to have a plan for how they're going to incorporate the experiences into their teaching in the future. I don't know if the other ICs have any perspective on that.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think it really depends on the specific program being proposed and an awareness of the trade-offs in what you're proposing to do. And then, of course, really making the case for why what you're proposing to do, will provide a robust research training experience. That's really the most important thing, but a lot of the details can vary between the different programs.
Is there anyone else who wanted to add to that? All right, and we did have, I'm not sure if this was kind of maybe answered in another question, but I'll ask it separately. Can more than one IC co-fund a project? So if you have perhaps things that seemingly are disparate, like environmental health and drug abuse, is it okay to, or are there instances where there are multiple institutes that co-fund one specific application?
I'll chime in real quick to start us off. So, thanks for that, Dr. Matthew. So Laura and I, we collaborate a lot on different R25s. We haven't co-funded on this one, but there's nothing stopping us. And we know that there's some small institutes out there. There's small research institutes, small teaching universities that we'd love to get applications from, but they might not have a cohort of drug abuse researchers. But combined with alcohol or collaborating with another institute, combined between alcohol and substance use, they could form a cohort of mentors to put together a program. So I know NIAAA and us, we would love to co-fund applications. Directors work closely together. So for us, yes, and we have co-funded other R25s in the past.
I'll just chime in and just say, if you plan on going that route, it's best to reach out to the PO ahead of time. So for NINDS, we really legally need to fund things within our mission space. And so if it's going to be a co-fund, I would want to reach out to Albert, for example, and get him on board sort of from the jump. So it's always best to talk to the PO beforehand.
Yeah, I'll echo that and just say yes, that NIAAA would be very glad to co-fund research with NIDA. There's obviously a lot of overlap between the missions of our institutes, and we understand a lot of overlap, in terms of how research on substance use, including alcohol, is conducted. But agree with Lauren, it's always good to talk to the POs, and you can certainly schedule a call with Albert and me at the same time too. We're happy to talk.
And I would just chime in too, the important thing is to contact us, reach out to us, tell us what your plans are so that we can respond to what your thoughts are, and we can get together whoever we need to really look at where that application goes.
Okay, well, we are out of time. So I want to say thank you all for joining us today. I think this has been a really nice discussion, some really great questions. Hopefully it was useful for you all as well. If your question wasn't answered or you have additional questions, like Mike said, just reach out to us, any one of us. If it's not the appropriate institute or not the appropriate program officer, we will direct you to the right person. We all talk to each other. And the recording and the slides will be available on the NINDS website. You should have just gotten an email from WebEx with the link to where the recording and the slides will be posted, and I'll try to get that up in the next few weeks. So thank you all again.